I grew up in a pretty quiet, although poor neighborhood. It was a lot of trailers and either kind elderly couples or most trailer trash people you've ever seen. There was the occasional house break-in or drunken street argument, but overall, it was fairly relaxed and we felt safe. I was about 10 years old, walking home from my bus stop. I was with my best friend Teresa, who was 11. We always walked home together since we lived, on the same road, and we're the only two kids on that street. And the stop was a little less than a quarter mile from our houses also, hitting around a bend in the road. My house was closer, so I would usually leave Teresa to walk the rest of the way herself. It was only one house down from mine, so it wasn't really a big deal. This day, we were only 2 houses down from mine when we heard a car coming up on the road behind us way too fast. We quickly moved into the grass as our road had no sidewalks to avoid reckless drivers. However, as soon as the car got up to where we were, it stopped. I looked over to see a large white windowless van and a large white man in a driver's seat. He was now just idling forward as slowly as he could, staring at us with this hungry expression. He was grinning. He licked his lips a few times and kept nodding to himself. Just imagine to yourself a fat redneck trucker looking guy nodding to himself, saying things like, yeah, and slurping his lips. You have a mental image of that guy. We kept walking, but I kept watching him, thinking it was just weird, but whatever. As soon as his van had moved past where we could stare at him or he could stare at us, he slammed the gas and tore off to the end of the street. Just as Teresa and I started talking about how weird that was, we saw him stop at the end of our small street, turn around, and come speeding back towards us. We kept walking since we were almost to my house, but we were nervous. He stopped again when he got to us and slowly crawled by, looking at us the way a dog looks at steak. We were really afraid at this point and we walked faster, hoping this guy wasn't about to jump out and grab us. We made it to the edge of my yard, but I gave my friend a look to tell her to keep walking. I didn't want him to see what yard we went to. As soon as he was past us, he sped off around the bend where he came from. When we saw the van disappear around the corner, we took off running back to my house. We got inside before the van returned and I ran to tell my mom what happened. Teresa was crying and she called her mom to let her know the situation. We ended up seeing the van speed up and down our street 3 more times looking for us before finally giving up. We waited a good hour or so before my mom drove Teresa home. I never saw that guy or the van again, but I shudder to think that he may have been contemplating kidnapping us. So this story is about my friend Abe and I. We were playing basketball at my local elementary on a Sunday night. We were just playing the normal one-on-one and usually we're all alone, but this night was different. There was a middle-aged man sitting on the swings talking on the phone, and when we noticed him, he stood up and he left. We both thought it was a bit weird since normally nobody was there. Plus, he wasn't with anyone. About 30 minutes later, it was getting dark out, so we decided to leave. While we were just about to leave, we saw 3 men walk into the playground and sit on the swings. We noticed one of the men was the same guy we saw earlier. So we hightailed it out of there on my moped, and while we were leaving, we saw the guy stand up and run to their car. We thought we lost them in my neighborhood and believed it was safe to go hide in my house. I was supposed to be home alone all night, so Abe just decided to sleep over. We woke up at around 3 a.m. in the morning to a knocking sound on my window. I sleep in the basement, which is already scary enough. Me and Abe just decided it was our brains making noises. In the morning, I went to open my window because it smelled awful in my room. I saw a note written in terrible handwriting that read, "We just wanted to play basketball. There was no need to run." I sent the picture to my friend, and we never went back to that playground to play basketball at night ever again. One day when I was 10 years old, I stayed home sick from school. I was lying on the couch watching TV when all of a sudden I heard the doorbell ring. It was the postman. He told me he had a package to deliver, but it was so big that he needed me to help carry it in. I don't know why, but I knew something wasn't quite right. I didn't see his truck parked out front, so when I asked him where it was, he told me it was around the corner. I asked him why the regular postman wasn't here, and he said he was visiting family. He kept telling me to open the front door. I said I was sick and I wasn't allowed to leave the house. I told him my parents would pick up the package from the post office, but he said that'd be too much of a hassle and told me my mom would want me to take the package now. I told him I had to get my shoes first, and then I would come out and help him. Then I closed the front door, locked it, and ran to the back door and locked that too. I called our neighbor, who was a close family friend, and I begged her to come over right now. Then I stood at the front door window and stared at the man. When he saw me, he yelled through the door asking if I had found my shoes yet. I yelled back telling him that I called my neighbor to come up and carry the package because she was older and stronger. He just turned around and ran off. They never caught him. I always wonder if he ever managed to trick somebody else. When I was 15, my mother went out shopping and left me in charge of the house. It was starting to get dark and I realized my little brother was nowhere to be found. I asked my sister if she knew where he was, and she said he had gone to the park around the corner to kick his soccer ball around. I told her to watch the house while I was gone and ran off to the direction of the park. When I got there, I was surprised to find the park completely empty. I called out my brother's name, but there was no answer. I started to get worried, and all of a sudden I heard a faint muffled noise coming from my left. I turned just in time to see a tall figure disappearing behind a large fence. I sprinted as fast as I could. When I came around to the other side of the fence, I saw something that almost made me choke in horror. My little brother was being dragged down the alleyway by a tall man. I flew into a rage and tears of anger streamed down my face. I ran at him and he must have heard me coming because he turned around to face me and he dropped my younger brother. The tall man tried to grab me, but I was running at him so fast that when I slammed into him, it knocked him off his feet. He swore and tried to get back up, but I just started stomping on his face. Without stopping to ask questions, I picked my brother up and ran as fast as I could back to our house. By this time, it was pitch black outside and my mother was home. She was frantic with worry, and when she saw the look on our face, she realized that something bad had happened. As I explained, my brother and I started crying, and my mom gave us both the biggest hug ever, and she cried with us. Eventually, the police were called, but this guy was never found. When I was 14, I was waiting for the bus, and this pickup truck pulled up right beside me. The driver kept waving at me to come closer, and he held up a map. It seemed like he wanted directions. I went over to the truck and he rolled down the window. I didn't realize what was happening until he reached out and tried to grab me by my hair. I dropped my bag and ran for it as he sped off. When I got home, I woke up my mom and told her what had happened. She flipped out. Then we looked out the window, and guess who was there? The truck was sitting across the street and the man was sitting in the driver's seat staring up at us. That's when I flipped out. My mom called the police and gave them the description, but the man drove off. Later on, the police called back to tell us that they had pulled someone over and wanted me to take a look at him. They put me in the back of an unmarked patrol car with tinted windows and drove me past the guy who was being questioned outside his truck, and it was him. I almost had a panic attack. They charged him with attempted kidnapping. It made all the local newspapers. The spot where they pulled him over was right in front of an elementary school. And when they searched his truck, they found rope, duct tape, and an axe.